All right, breaking news at 7 o'clock Eastern, 2 hours away. Two men, two visions of the country. And it is a divided country, united tonight around their TV screens. It is debate night in America. With that, we welcome you to the Ferris Show on television by 10:30 or so tonight. When things wrap up, maybe they'll shake hands at the end, maybe they won't. The most important presidential debate in history. The first ever with two presidents, one current, one former, facing off on stage, will have come and gone. And if you ask yourself who won, if you have to ask that question, you're asking yourself the wrong question. So let's start with what we know, and what we know perhaps even going forward. Fact number one, walking onto the stage tonight, you would rather be Donald Trump. In the past month, he's erased Biden's money advantage. He's peeling away black and Latino voters. Two recent polls show Trump up meaningfully in the national head-to-head, and Biden faces an uphill battle on the economy. That's fact number one. Fact number two, no matter how demure and presidential Donald Trump acts tomorrow, the headlines will be about Trump lashing out. Fact number three, if Joe Biden stays awake and standing through all 90 minutes, and reasonable people can agree he probably will, that's safe money. If that happens, most of the media will certify he is fit for another 5 years. And I will add fact number four. It's not in the teleprompter, but I'm going to add it. Whatever happens at the debate, it will be overshadowed by Monday, because the Supreme Court will have ruled on the Trump immunity case in terms of whether or not Donald Trump goes to trial before the election on the January 6th charges. Lots can happen tonight. Also, lots cannot happen tonight. And that's where we start 2 hours before the debate. Eric Erickson, host of the nationally syndicated Eric Erickson Show, was with us in a minute. But first, we start with Kelly Meyer from outside the convention center in Atlanta, with who the campaigns have brought with them. Hi, Kelly.
Hey there, Leland. We're actually bringing you inside. We're on the spin room floor, and it's the only place where you'll find Corey Lewandowski, Gavin Newsom, and Byron Donald, who are all on the floor just behind me, all in one place. So we know that former President Trump, he is here. President Biden is also here, and they are going to be bringing their surrogates all on the spin room floor. That will be post-debate, but we know they're gearing up and getting ready. And as you said, we really don't know what might happen here tonight. The feeling here is a little tense on both sides because no one knows really how this is going to go. The strategy going into it has changed a little bit on both sides, and then we're all gearing up for that, getting closer and closer now, Leland.
All right, Kelly Meyer, thank you very much. Eric Erickson, host of the nationally syndicated Eric Erickson Show, author of You Shall Be As Gods, Pagans, Progressives, and the Rise of the Gnostic Left. I have my copy with me right here, and I am going to be taking it with me on vacation to read. Eric, congratulations.
Thank you.
I said earlier, end of the debate, if you ask yourself who won, the answer is nobody, and we can all move on with our lives. You agree with that assessment?
Yeah, to a degree I do. However, that being said, if Joe Biden really does have a senior moment, because he will be without teleprompter, he really will be the loser in the debate. If Donald Trump loses his temper, that's probably going to be him. But you're right. On Monday, everybody's going to be talking about the Supreme Court because we still have a series of significant decisions, including the immunity decision, and nobody has a long attention span anymore.
Well, nobody has a long attention span, especially when we all want to get to July 4th holiday, right? And all of a sudden, sort of the temperature lowers, and it's just not in the same intensity level. You're setting up essentially that nobody wins, but one of the two men could lose.
That's exactly right. Look, both sides are going to look at the debate and say their guy won. The question is the public watching, and I think this debate is going to be watched. It's a historic moment for Joe Biden because if he does have one of those significant senior moments, there's going to be a gasp from the public that, it's not true. He's not brilliant behind the scene. We're seeing this. And the Democrats are going to have hard choices to make. If that doesn't happen, both sides will say my guy won and everyone will forget about it. We'll move on. That's why they wanted it so early.
Yeah, look, and the the Biden team is spinning this, right? The reason they wanted it so early is to all of a sudden get people to pay attention. I think you make a good point. It's also almost 2 months, 6 weeks really, until the DNC. So if there is some kind of senior moment, there's a lot that can happen in 6 weeks in terms of discussions about Joe Biden. I saw this last night. Joy Reid, MSNBC, who is opposite us at the 7 p.m. hour, said this about Joe Biden and Donald Trump on the same stage. Take a listen.
This is the question. Are y'all as offended as I am about the fact that it's possible for this person who is a felon and an adjudicated sexual assaulter to stand next to the actual president and we're supposed to take him seriously like that? There's something deeply offensive about that. Should Biden exhibit that?
To be fair, Biden already exhibits it often, right? Because he talks about Donald Trump in very, very difficult terms and talks about his supporters in difficult terms. There was a line in there, I don't know if you caught it in the same way I did, adjudicated sexual assaulter, because he was not found guilty of any crimes, but he was found civilly liable in the E. Jean Carroll case. I'm wondering if you think Joy Reid came up with that line, or if that's a line that has been fed by the campaign and Joe Biden may say it himself tonight.
I don't think she's smart enough to come up with lines like that. I think that someone else came up with that. I'm really not a fan of hers, and I do think that the Democrats use several of the hosts at MSNBC to trot out their lines, and we're going to start hearing all of these together. The problem is it's not moving the needle at all. I mean, the polling average goes back up for Donald Trump. If the Democrats hang their hat on sexual offender, convicted felon, democracy's under attack, Americans are going to the grocery store wondering who cares about that. And the only guy talking about it is Donald Trump.
Right. Elections are about the future, and voters, oddly enough, care about themselves, not about the candidates. Americans want these topics raised at the debate. 60% inflation, 54% border security, 44% healthcare, 44% Social Security, and the national debt, 43%. Interestingly enough, on Social Security, the two men agree. They both say they're not going to cut it. On the national debt, neither man seems to have all that much of an interest in dealing with it. Thought would be, obviously, that Joe Biden would raise taxes significantly, whether or not he uses it to deal with the national debt. But as much as people say they want these issues discussed, I think you said it right, people care about the grocery store. At the end of the debate, years later, the only thing anybody ever remembers about the debates are the zingers, are the moments that have absolutely nothing to do ever with policy.
You're absolutely right. Ronald Reagan, I won't hold my opponent's youth and experience against him. All of the George H.W. Bush looking at his watch in a debate. People remember those moments and who's going to have the most. Donald Trump, for his part, has some witty lines. Joe Biden's been holed up for a week practicing them. No one's going to really remember this debate in 3 months. They're going to remember their feeling about the debate, and those feelings come from the viral moments, and neither candidate can try to force them. They just happen, and more often than not, they're not the lines the candidate wants to go viral. There's something else.
Yeah, look, to your point about people can lose, sometimes it's the unplanned moment that goes wrong. And you can certainly think about the way it went wrong for Gerald Ford. MSNBC, and I hate to keep bringing them up, but you see kind of from out of Joe Biden's campaign comes MSNBC's morning rundown, especially for Joe Scarborough, Joe Biden's favorite television host. Take a listen.
The hostility, from what we're seeing already from the Trump campaign, is coming from Trump toward them to try and create hostility. And I'm sure that they will be elegant and fair and try their best to ask Donald Trump, and this is his worst nightmare, basic questions.
Jake Tapper and Dana Bash are two of the best we have in our business.
What do you make of this pre-buttal defense? Because if people are fair, you don't have to say ahead of time they're going to be fair. Right.
I think that the Trump campaign, his spokeswoman on with Casey Hunt on CNN the other day, and the roughing of the refs to begin with. There is a circle of the wagons among the press. I got to tell you, if the story is about Jake and Dana, who I know, consider them friends, but if they're the story tomorrow, CNN's the loser of the debate, and it hurts the entire press corps. They've got every incentive to have a fair debate. And I do think if they spend too much time, for example, on probing Trump on January 6th and the like, that winds up helping Donald Trump because he can say, I came in with hostile moderators and a hostile guy beside me, and I still came out on top. I don't think they'll do that, but there is a real danger.
Look, Donald Trump is at his best when he's playing the victim, right? He sort of needs that, and he needs that foil. We'll have Caroline Levitt, spokesperson for Donald Trump, on in a few minutes. Eric, good to see you. Congrats on the book. We'll talk after the 4th, my friend.
Thanks very much. Take care.
All right, we'll see you for the full hour here as the spin room in Atlanta fills up. Chris Cuomo takes over at 8 o'clock. We'll get you through the debate, and then after the debate, we'll have Robert F. Kennedy with Cuomo on late into the evening. Kennedy is quite upset he was not on the stage. Donald Trump is far ahead in the polls, but there is one thing he can do that will absolutely, totally screw things up. We'll talk about that one thing next. Plus, Team Biden set expectations so low that simply getting through the 90 minutes will be hailed as a success. Who has to play along for Biden's plan to work? Live pictures of Atlanta. President Biden's team wanted the first debate early, as it is, to try and make up some ground on Donald Trump. Team Biden certainly hopes his performance tonight will move the needle in the polling. The election forecast from our partners at DDHQ gives Trump a 58% chance of winning the presidency. This isn't a poll. This is a model, and that's up 2% over the past month. Scott Tranter is here, Director of Data Science at Decision Desk HQ. Pretty clear from that number and from other models, not nearly as good as yours, but the data scientists around the country seem to be in agreement that you'd a lot rather be Donald Trump tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing to point out, when we were having this conversation a month ago, it was roughly at 56%, and that was pre-conviction. So we had a major news event, and it stayed relatively stable, which should give us an insight heading in tonight.
And that insight is what?
Insight is one of these candidates has to do something unexpected, otherwise we're not going to see much movement.
So in other words, they have to do something bold, and the person conceivably who would have to do that, something very bold, is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Do we see anything in the polling that says this is what would change the numbers drastically?
Yeah, look, a lot of these, what we like to call double haters, people who are not enamored with either candidate, right? And some of there are Republicans who fit that definition and Democrats. And they've got one of three options. They can come out and vote for their Democrat or Republican candidate. They can vote for the opposite, or they can not show up at all.
Now, you got Gavin Newsom right now in the spin room. That's one of the surrogates for Joe Biden. Interestingly enough, of the surrogates from the list that we've seen, none of them are sort of centrists. They're all pretty much the sort of extreme parts of both parties on the list, which plays into where we're going next. The state of Virginia. You say Biden has a 75% chance of winning the state of Virginia. That is where Donald Trump is headed tomorrow for a rally. Why?
With Republican Glenn Youngkin. Look, he thinks it's in play. Fundamentally, Virginia has moved more Democratic in the last 20 years. I understand there's some good polls, but I also understand campaign strategy. You go there, you make your opponent think that you're spending money there, especially they got a Republican governor who may be a VP pick. So these are all things on the table, but by and large, Virginia is a relatively safe state for Joe Biden right now.
Pretty stunning, though, that it's tied in the polling.
Tied in the polling, but not in the forecast, because fundamentally Virginia is.
So this is one of those times when you see a poll that's tied, but you switch to the probability view, and all of a sudden you realize this is where your model comes in. It's much more likely. Now we'll go to North Carolina. Probability almost the same, 70-30, but in this case for Donald Trump. That is where Joe Biden is heading tomorrow. A big part of Joe Biden's problem right now across the country is with African American voters. Black voters in North Carolina, 49-23 for Donald Trump. If Joe Biden's going to have a chance to win the presidency, that number's got to be up, what? It's north of 75%?
North of 75. And so what that tells me here is there are a lot of African-American voters who are up for grabs. But yeah, Joe Biden's going to need that in the 80 to 85% range in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, if he's going to win those key critical states.
And what we're hearing from the Biden camp over and over and over again about African-American votes is Donald Trump is racist. Cue Raphael Warnock, Senator of Georgia.
You want someone who is trying to literally roll the clock back. Do you want somebody who can run on their record of centering ordinary people? Or do you want someone who insults you by suggesting that you ought to vote for him because he has a criminal record?
All right, so that brings us now to the Electoral College map. So we have up here your DDHQ sort of baseline, right? Virginia, in this case, is going to Joe Biden, North Carolina, going to Donald Trump. What is left up, Nevada, Arizona, we'll get to those in a minute, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Those four states, the African-American vote makes or breaks it for Joe Biden.
Absolutely, it does. 10 or 15% of the African-American vote switching one way or the other makes or breaks it in all those states.
Just 10 or 15%?
10 or 15%.
Of the African-American vote.
Yeah.
Black voters in particular have been hit the hardest when it comes to the past year of making ends meet. They're the ones who have the most number of African-Americans have said now they're having a hard time paying bills. Raphael Warnock, and to be fair, Donald Trump has said, hey, black voters like me more because I have a mugshot. Is it because of that, or is it because of the economic issues?
I think it's because of the economic issues. We've got a lot of data on that. You and I have been talking about the economy's been the number one issue going back to 2022. And as you pointed out, they're the ones taking the brunt of it. And so they're looking for some sort of relief. And Donald Trump's speaking to that.
All right, so when we hear about these big moments in debates that can really change the map, they're never about the issues that people say are important to them. They're always about a zinger on one way or the other. What you're basically saying is that in order to change this map materially, Joe Biden has to do something sort of game-changing in his...
Something that changes the narrative, something unexpected, right? Everyone knows who Joe Biden is. Everyone knows who Donald Trump is. All voters have had an opportunity to vote for them at least once, if not more. They've got an opinion. They've already seen it. So they need to see something that says, oh, I'm going to change my opinion about Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
So simply putting the age issue to rest or simply putting Trump's personality issues and acting more presidential to rest, that's not enough.
Probably not. That might be enough around some of the margins, but that's not going to move 5 or 10 points in a state like Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin.
What states are most likely in the toss-ups to move on a debate?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I could make an argument either way. I'm looking at states like Nevada and Arizona with some of the more diverse populations in terms of minority populations, working class, things like that, because those are the ones where we find, a critical mass of some of the independent voters. Not very many of them left, but that's where a lot of them are.
Nevada.
Arizona,
where you got more independence. Scott, fascinating. Great work as always. Thanks, my friend. Good to see you. We will talk in a couple of weeks and see what the effects of all these, see the effects of the debate. All right, back to Atlanta. When we come back, we'll show you Donald Trump's plan if he loses the debate. On tonight's debate stage, as we look out in Atlanta, there will be Joe Biden and Donald Trump, of course, and there will be two moderators, the referees, if you will, that Team Trump is already complaining about. Here's Caroline Levitt of the Trump campaign a little earlier this week about Jake Tapper.
President Trump is knowingly going into a hostile environment on this very network, on CNN, with debate moderators who have made their opinions about him very well known over the past 8 years and their biased coverage of him.
So I'll just say my colleagues, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, have acquitted themselves as professionals as they have covered campaigns and interviewed candidates from all sides of the aisle.
All right, Caroline Levitt, Trump 2024 National Press Secretary, is with us. Thank you. You say he's knowingly going into a hostile environment. Why would anybody knowingly go into a hostile environment? It's so unfair.
Well, because President Trump delivers on his promises, and he promised the American people that he would debate Joe Biden anytime, anywhere, any place. Now, he backed Joe Biden into a corner to accept this debate. If you remember, there were many conversations about Democrats and Joe Biden not doing debates at all, but because President Trump kept his foot on the gas with that challenge, here we are tonight. He readily accepted CNN's terms, knowing that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash do have a history of anti-Trump statements. I'm not making that up. That is a fact. No, and anyone can go look them up for themselves.
We've played some of them. Don't worry. In terms of fairness, and I want to drill down on this because I think it's important beforehand. Is it fair for the moderators to ask if Donald Trump accepts Joe Biden as the legitimate winner of the 2020 election? Is it fair to ask about January 6th?
Yes, he's been asked that time and time again. And President Trump engages in media interviews all the time. Those questions have been asked and answered. We expect them to be asked tonight, and he'll be well prepared to answer both of those.
All right, fair enough. In terms of preparation, we're to believe that there's been a lot, correct?
Well, no, not quite. There has been preparation. He's been meeting with policy experts, absolutely. But the best preparation of all is talking to the American voters and taking questions from them. And that's what President Trump has been doing over the last week. He had 3 big speeches in the past week in 3 different cities. He was at a cheesesteak shop in Philadelphia this past weekend, taking questions directly from voters. That's the most important audience of all. And so he's well prepared, understanding what voters care about. And if you go out and talk to voters, and if you look at every single poll, those issues are immigration and inflation. And so we hope that the moderators will ask good questions on both of those issues tonight.
It seems like you're setting up a little bit, right, for if we lose or if there's criticism of Donald Trump, hey, complain about the refs, and hey, the other guy was juiced up is the other sort of main thread we're hearing out of the Trump campaign. Isn't that sort of just setting up for a loss?
No, not at all. We've said consistently that if CNN asks good, tough questions of both candidates, by the way, again, on the issues that actually matter to the millions of voters watching at home, then this is going to be a great opportunity for President Trump tonight to contrast his strength with Joe Biden's evident weakness and to talk about his first-term record as president, securing the border, rebuilding the economy, restoring peace around this world, versus Joe Biden's record of failures that the American people have felt over the last 4 years.
You make a great point. The American people care about inflation. They care about crime. They care about immigration. They care about Social Security. I can go down a very long list. Media bias is not ever on a list of a poll that I have seen. We had Bill O'Reilly on Monday discussing your conversation on CNN where they ended the interview with you. Take a listen.
All Ms. Levitt had to do is saying, you know, Casey, we are a little worried that CNN is not going to treat us fairly on Thursday night. As you know, Casey, both Mr. Tapper and Ms. Bash have said terrible things about Donald Trump in the past. Terrible. And then she should have had a list of them right in her hand.
Why do you think that moment on Monday morning, and I won't get you on the list because sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't, but why did that moment on Monday morning where Casey Hunt ended the interview strike such a note in American politics?
Well, to answer to what Mr. O'Reilly said, I was trying to go down the list, but unfortunately I was cut off from speaking and thrown off of the program. But I think that on Monday, CNN actually proved our campaign's point in doing so. They did not want to have a discussion, and I was trying to be respectful and just bring up, honest concerns of our campaign, which I think are fair, considering these are the moderators in tonight's debate. And instead, they cut me off, and people don't like to see that. They want honest discussion. They want real dialogue in this country, and we should have that. And again, we're hopeful that that will be the case tonight on the debate stage.
I hear all those points, but as I said, what people want to hear about, or at least what they tell us they want to hear about, are the issues, not the grievances of one candidate about unfairness. And I'm wondering why you think that...
Did you watch my first answer to her first question in the interview? Because I did actually talk about what President Trump is going to say on the debate stage, talking about his vision for immigration and inflation. She came back and decided to rebut my one point about her fellow colleagues, and so therefore I made my second point, and that's when I got cut off the air. So you should go back and watch the whole interview before you try to critique the way that I answer questions. And if you want to talk about the issues that matter, we can do that right now in this program. President Trump had minimal inflation when he was in office. We didn't even talk about that word because it didn't exist. It wasn't an issue. The gasoline was cheap in this country. We had a secure border. Now all of that has been destroyed by Joe Biden, and I'd love to talk about the facts about that right now if you'd wish.
All right. Well, those issues actually will come up in our next interview when we're going to head over and talk to Team Biden. Caroline, we appreciate you being here. Thank you. We will never end the interview. We may have tough questions, but we will never end the interview. Thanks for being here. All right.
These weren't tough, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. From the Biden camp, California Congressman Ro Khanna is with us now. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you. Heard from Caroline Levitt, and it seems as though Trump's plan, if he doesn't do well or doesn't like the debate, blame the moderators, say Biden was juiced up, and probably announce his VP pick sometime before July 4th and get the conversation switched. What is Democrats' plan if Joe Biden does not meet expectations?
Well, first of all, I fully expect that the president will rise to the occasion. He always does. But the key for him is to talk about the economy, to make it clear that he's actually been for the working class. And I think after the debate, he's going to do a barnstorming tour through a lot of the Midwestern states on the economic message. And that's really what the president's going to focus on.
He's been doing a barnstorming tour on the economic message. He talks about it all the time, talks about the economic numbers all the time. And the polling just doesn't reflect it. Trump leads Biden Quinnipiac poll, 49-45. Trump leads Biden with independents, 51-41. Trump leads Biden after conviction, New York Times Siena poll, 48-44. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. He's been talking about the economy, and is the plan just to keep talking about the economy?
Well, it hasn't broken through yet, but you know, Leland, you've been watching a lot of these presidential races. I mean, Dukakis was up 17 points in August. I think most Americans tune in after Labor Day. There's still the conventions to go. And I do think that the key differentiation for the president is that he's got a better plan to bring manufacturing back, to lower inflation, to highlight what Trump's actual policies are going to be. You know, Trump wants to, under Project 2025, repeal Davis-Bacon. That's repealing prevailing wage. He wants to repeal project labor agreements. He wants to put a 10% import tax, meaning everything we buy could be $1,700 more per year for families. I think that contrast has to be drawn.
So you're making the point that things change. Does that mean if Dukakis was 17 points down, as you said in August, or 17 points up in August, are you making the case that Joe Biden is the underdog here, the incumbent?
I think it's a toss-up race, but I mean, I'm not going to deny polls. Obviously, the president is in a very difficult race. There are some polls, like the Fox poll a week ago, that showed him up 2 points. There's the Quinnipiac poll that shows him down 4 points. My view is any pundit who says they know what the outcome is going to be probably doesn't really know. I mean, this is a closely divided nation. It's a toss-up race and could go either way.
Look, you make a great point, right? This is why we play the game. This is why we have the debate. Dukakis' debate performance, especially on the question about his wife. If his wife was murdered, would he support the death penalty? That was seen as a seminal moment that really changed things and crystallized America's view of him. In terms of the case that President Biden needs to make, George Will wrote, in Biden versus Trump, it's too bad both can't lose. There's a lot of Americans who would agree with that. I don't know if you laugh, so I won't press you if you're one of the ones who agrees with that. Biden's most remarkable achievement as president has been to produce Trump nostalgia. And Will quotes a statistic, 55% of Americans now call Trump's presidency a success. We understand President Biden is going to spend an awful lot of time trying to talk about how bad Donald Trump was in the first term. Is it a winning strategy to tell people how bad someone was when 55% of them consider him a success.
Well, George Will's an incisive commentator, but he knows better than almost anyone that we tend to view former presidents with nostalgia. People's numbers rise the longer they're out of office. And when you're actually in the fray, when you're in the kitchen taking the heat, it's much harder. And the President Biden is the incumbent. And he's the incumbent at a time where we have two wars, Ukraine and in the Middle East. He's an incumbent at a time where we are recovering from the pandemic, when the costs of living has been higher because of all these global factors. But the president needs to talk about what he's done, that he's standing up for Ukraine's integrity, and Trump will give Ukraine part of it to Putin, that the president has a vision for two states. Donald Trump hasn't articulated what he would do in the Middle East, that the president actually has presided over unemployment numbers coming down and inflation coming down. Donald Trump will make those numbers go up. And I think we just have to continue to hammer the case that it's a difficult time, but his leadership is working, and he humbly asks for 4 more years.
All right. Well, humble is something that we probably have never seen from Donald Trump. So if Joe Biden can pull that off, that is a lane he will own. Ro Khanna, we'll always appreciate you being with us. Thank you. Hope to have you on set next time, sir.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Leland.
Live pictures right now of the spin room. Byron Donalds of the Trump campaign pre-spinning ahead of the big matchup. We know Joe Biden will try to provoke Donald Trump, and in many ways, Donald Trump is uncontrollable. But there are ways to corral Donald Trump. That's secret when we come back.
To be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history, or should I be nice and calm?
All right, nice and calm is a Donald Trump we do not often see. And tonight, he will not have a studio audience to play with. NewsNation contributor, former White House acting chief of staff Mick Mulvaney's job was it to corral Trump to be, at times, nice and calm. Is it in there?
It is. I don't think you'll see it tonight. He's gotten, every time we would sit down and have those types of conversations with the President of the United States and say, Mr. President, we think you should do it this way, he would sit back and say, how many times have you run for president and won? I'm 1 for 1. I'm going to do it my way. He's a gut politician.
Now he's 1 for 2.
He is, but he's a gut politician, so he's going to do it his way. I think if everybody in there said you should do it nice and calm, and he says, I want to do it mean and nasty, he's going to do it mean and nasty.
All right. This from Bill O'Reilly. Somewhere towards the end of the bloviating, when the debate tone has been set, Trump needs to look directly into the camera and say, I love my country. I wouldn't be doing this if I did not. I realize some Americans don't like me. I understand. But my 4 years in office strengthened our country. Most Americans benefited and will do that again if I can earn your vote. I promise. You want to put an over-under on that happening?
0. It's good advice, but that's just not Donald. Does that sound to you like Donald Trump? Look, everybody, I talk to folks here in this building. There are 5 or 6 networks in this building. You bump into people in the lobby and say, oh, we think Trump should do this. I'm like, yeah, that makes some sense. That makes some sense. I can see that coming. That's not what Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is going to be Donald Trump tonight. Does he have the ability to do the other stuff, to be nice and calm? Yes, he does. I've seen it. But I think tonight you're going to see the ordinary Donald Trump.
What is, and I'm trying to square a circle from Caroline Levitt's interview, his spokesperson, who said, basically he's not doing any prep. He's having these policy meetings and then he's giving speeches. Yeah. Yet we have reporting that he's actually doing a lot of prep and he actually is practicing.
That I don't believe. I believe Caroline Levitt when she says that. Keep in mind, he lost his sparring partner. His sparring partner in 2016, the person who practices with you. So the
guy who played Joe Biden or
played Hillary Clinton was Chris Christie. And that person is gone. And Trump had a level of comfort with Chris that I don't know if he's got with anybody else. So if Caroline tells me that he's not really doing that much prep, I believe that.
All right. You also know the way sort of the White House runs. What do you make of the fact that Melania Trump did not come with him?
Not much. Not much. She didn't like being first lady.
Yeah, but the debate's a pretty big deal.
Is it, or is it just another? Is it just another
that moment? That moment when the wives come up afterwards.
Okay. No, I really don't think so. That's just not. This is to Trump. This is another rally. This is just another night at work. He doesn't practice for the rallies. He doesn't practice for the big speeches, and he's not going to practice for this. He's going to go out and be Donald Trump.
All right. And now, one moment I think that we remember from the 2016 debate with Hillary Clinton was when she said, basically, you're unfit to be president. This was his retort.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
There's this theory that the muted mics, which is kind of a myth anyway, because you're going to still hear people shouting and on, help Donald Trump because he won't interrupt like he did in 2020, or he can't interrupt. But his comedic timing, that showman thing that he does, like with Hillary Clinton, is a huge strength that is now taken away.
Yes and no. It's a really good question. I've heard a lot of folks debate this. Keep in mind, understand how we got here, okay? Which is that this is not a presidential debate commission debate. This is essentially a deal agreed to by the network and both candidates, which means that the Trump team was okay with turning off the microphones after 2 minutes, as was Joe Biden. I think both of them see pluses and negatives. Believe me, there's folks on the Trump team who didn't want to turn off the mics, not because they want to silence Donald Trump, but because they want Joe Biden to go on and on and on. I sat at dinner with Joe Biden one time at the Irish ambassador's residence. He talked for 45 minutes nonstop. People started getting up from the table and leaving in the middle of dinner. There's a benefit to both camps from having those microphones turned off after 2 minutes.
Speaking of Joe Biden, which Joe Biden do we get tonight?
I think you're going to see the one from the State of the Union. I really do. Whether or not it's from rest and relaxation. We talked about this on the Hill the other night. I wrote a piece in the Hill about whether or not he would be on chemicals, the same chemicals I took when I was in the White House. They're not bad medicine. It's prescribed medicine. It's perfectly legitimate to take it. I think that's the Joe Biden you're going to see tonight. It's the same one you saw at the State of the Union.
But there's all this discussion, right? Are we going to see nice Trump or mean Trump? And there were times that Donald Trump, I'm thinking about his acceptance speech 2016, where his victory speech, that he really tempered himself. You look better, you look more rested now than you do in all of those pictures.
I have more hair in that picture. By the way, I think I'm wearing the same tie.
That's a good tie. It's a very good tie. The question would be, and we'll put up some more live pictures of the debate hall. For all the talk about there being two Donald Trumps, there's also two Joe Bidens, right? Mm-hmm. There's Scranton Joe, and then there's kind of bully, tough man. Now, whether that's an act or not, I don't know. Which Joe Biden do we get tonight?
On both of them, I think you get a chance to see a little bit of both. You're going to do it for 90 minutes, right? So I think, will it be a chance for Joe Biden to show his more professional side? Yes. Will he be able to sort of maybe change gears and push back on Donald Trump at other times? Yes. Could Trump show a couple different aspects tonight in one showing? Yeah, because you get a nice big chunk of time. This is not a 3-minute interview. It's not a short pop, right? This is a good chunk of time, and you get a chance, I think, to see the whole range of what they have to offer. But overall, I think Trump is going to do Trump and Biden is going to do Biden. It would be fascinating, Leland, to see one of them try and change. To have Donald Trump come out and be warm and fuzzy and all that, and Biden to come out and be really aggressive. But I just don't think you can change somebody when they're in the late 70s or early 80s.
For those of us in Washington, we know that the White House press corps, the small traveling press pool of rotating reporters, travel with the president absolutely everywhere. And when they are excluded from anything, there is hell to pay by the White House. And you've been on the receiving end of that as chief of staff. What do you make of the fact that CNN, who has been at the top of the list about talking about journalism and journalistic access and everything else, is fully excluding the White House press pool from the debate?
Really, really bad idea. By the way, the reason that there's always somebody from the press pool around the president, wherever we go, they're there, is in case something happens. The president has a medical emergency. There's something dramatic that happens. The press wants to be there, and we want the press to be there. So this is one of those rare circumstances where the press is locked out of the room except for one network. And I think that's almost unheard of. I don't know if you've ever seen that in this town. I've been here 15 years. I've never seen it before. And I'm not sure it's going to serve CNN very well in the long term.
Yeah, you can think about the time that even just one of their reporters was not allowed was excluded from an
cow.
event. Yeah, and they just democracy was melting down, and now here we go.
I used to not ask what's his name, the guy from CNN, Costa. He used to sit in the front row and yell and scream. I would ignore him. They would complain about that I didn't, that since he sits in the front row, I have to answer his questions. No, they would complain, lodge a formal complaint with the press office that we were ignoring CNN.
Fascinating, Mick. Always good to see you. It'd be fun to get your analysis tomorrow. We'll see you soon.
You got it.
All right. Young voters are moving to Donald Trump at a remarkable pace. A 20-point swing in just 4 years. We had Vivek Ramaswamy up earlier. He's one of the ones who's, and there he is again, has spoken to the young voters, the youth vote, what Mr. Biden will promise tonight to win the youth vote back. Live pictures of the debate stage, Atlanta, Georgia. Well, this is the spin room in Atlanta, where the first presidential debate of 2024 is just over an hour away. President Trump, former President Biden will slug it out, particularly when it comes to the youth vote, and here is why. Polling from the New York Times and Siena College shows Biden leading Trump among voters under the age of 30 by 6%. In 2020, Biden led this group 59-33. In other words, Trump has made up a 20-point spread. Wyatt Sharp knows about the youth vote, 15-year-old journalist covering the debate tonight and is in Atlanta. Wyatt, what do you make of this huge shift? What can Biden say, or what do you think he will say tonight to try to win back the youth vote?
I mean, I think it's interesting just looking purely at the fact that a lot of people, specifically young people, are looking at not necessarily what he's saying so much as how he's saying it. I think a lot of people, for example, whether it be the Juneteenth event that President Biden had at the White House, whether it be the Jimmy Kimmel fundraiser, I mean, they're looking at these types of things. They're seeing, for example, President Biden struggling cognitively, and they're wondering, well, if he can't actually, think freely to actually help try and develop some of his own arguments, then what he's actually saying becomes a little bit less important, so to speak. And that's not to say that what he's saying isn't important. I mean, I do think that young Americans are looking in particular for strong, robust arguments as it relates to the cost of living, affordability. There's been a couple people here on the ground from the young Republicans that we've been speaking to, and they say that for them to even consider Joe Biden having a good night tonight, he does have to talk about that. And in addition to immigration as well, which is something that's been quite pressing for a lot of Republicans here.
Yeah, student loans will be a big issue. We'll hear Joe Biden talk about that. You think there's anything to this idea that Gen Zers don't really remember a Trump presidency, so they just kind of like that Donald Trump's Donald Trump?
I do think that to a certain degree. I think a lot of people in particular are looking at what's happening right now. They saw Donald Trump. They saw, as an example, whether it be the war in Israel or Ukraine, they were really looking at it from a perspective of he was perhaps stronger than the current administration. And so as a result, he was able to do things more effectively and kind of say what he means. So a lot to watch for.
We got to run. They might say distance makes the heart grow fonder. After 4 years from Donald Trump's presidency. Chris picks up our coverage from New York.